You turn on the news, and within seconds, your chest tightens. Why does this happen more now than it did 20 years ago? And before you continue, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment telling me if this happens to you too. Because what I'm about to reveal changes everything you thought you knew about your own mind. Most people think this anxiety comes from caring too much, or from being more sensitive with age. But that's not what's really happening. There's something deeper going on inside your brain, something that has nothing to do with weakness, and everything to do with how your mind has evolved over 5 decades of life. Let me show you what I mean. You're having breakfast. The TV is on in the background. A reporter talks about conflict somewhere in the world, and suddenly, you feel it. That knot in your stomach, that tension in your shoulders. You try to shake it off, but it stays with you for hours, maybe even days. And here's what most people don't understand. This isn't happening because you're fragile. It's happening because your brain has changed. Pay attention to this. After 50 years of living, your mind has accumulated something powerful: experience. And not just any experience, real experience. You've seen things go wrong. You've watched relationships fall apart. You've lived through losses, economic crises, health scares, and your brain remembers all of it. Every single pattern, every warning sign, every time something small became something big. And now, when you see conflict on the news, your brain doesn't just process information. It matches patterns. It searches through 50 years of memories, looking for anything similar. And when it finds a match, even a partial one, it sends you a warning signal: anxiety. This is more common than you think. A younger person watches the same news and feels concern, maybe worry, but then they move on. They scroll to the next thing. They forget about it in an hour. But you can't, because your brain won't let you. And there's a detail here that almost nobody notices. Your anxiety isn't about that specific conflict. It's about what your experience tells you could happen next. You've seen how things escalate, how small tensions become big problems, how stability can disappear overnight, and your mind is trying to protect you by making you pay attention, by making you feel something, so you'll prepare, so you'll be ready, even when there's nothing you can actually do. Here's what happens inside your brain. When you were younger, your amygdala, the part of your brain that processes fear and threat, it was less connected to your memory centers. You could see something disturbing, and your brain would categorize it as far away or not my problem. But after 50, after decades of real-world experience, those neural pathways have strengthened. Your amygdala and your hippocampus, the memory center, they talk to each other constantly now, and they've gotten very good at their job. Too good sometimes, because every time you see conflict news, your hippocampus pulls up relevant memories. Times you felt unsafe, times you worried about your children, times the world felt unstable, and your amygdala interprets those memories as current threats, even when they're not. But here's where it gets interesting, because behind this heightened sensitivity, there's a psychological pattern that changes everything, and most people never discover it. They just think they're getting more anxious with age. But that's not the full picture. What's really happening is this. Your brain has developed something called protective hypervigilance. Not the clinical kind, the wisdom kind. You're not paranoid, you're experienced, and your mind knows something crucial: that the world is interconnected, that what happens far away can affect what happens close to home. You've lived through enough global events to know this. The oil crisis, economic crashes, pandemics, and your brain remembers the ripple effects, how something that seemed distant suddenly wasn't. So when you see conflict news now, your mind doesn't dismiss it, it considers it, it runs scenarios, it worries, not because you're weak, but because you're wise enough to know that dismissing threats is how people get caught unprepared. And here's the thing nobody talks about. This response is actually a survival advantage. Younger people can afford to be dismissive. They have time to recover from mistakes. They have decades ahead to rebuild. But at 50 and beyond, your window is different. Your resources are different. Your responsibilities are different. You might be caring for aging parents, supporting adult children, managing retirement savings, dealing with health concerns, and your brain knows that you can't afford to be blindsided, so it stays alert, sometimes too alert, but always trying to protect you. Now pay attention to this next part, because it reveals why some people feel this more intensely than others. It's not about being more sensitive, it's about how much responsibility you carry. The more people who depend on you, the more your brain scans for threats. A grandmother watching conflict news thinks about her grandchildren's future. A person managing retirement funds thinks about economic stability. A caregiver for elderly parents thinks about healthcare systems. And the anxiety multiplies because it's not just about you anymore. It never was just about you. Your brain is trying to protect everyone in your circle, everyone you love, everyone who counts on you. And that's exhausting. But here's what this really means. That anxiety you feel, that tightness in your chest when you watch the news, it's not a flaw in your character. It's not you being too emotional. It's not weakness. It's your brain doing exactly what it was designed to do. After 50 years of learning, after accumulating wisdom, after understanding how the world actually works, your mind is performing at its highest level of pattern recognition. You see connections younger people miss. You understand implications they haven't lived long enough to grasp. You know that today's small conflict could be tomorrow's big crisis, and your brain won't let you ignore that, even when ignoring it would feel better, because feeling better isn't the goal. Survival is, preparation is, protection is, and your anxiety, as uncomfortable as it is your mind's way of keeping you engaged, keeping you aware, keeping you ready. This is the psychological pattern most people never recognize. What they call anxiety is actually advanced threat assessment. What they call overthinking is actually deep scenario planning. What they call sensitivity is actually experiential wisdom in action. And once you understand this, everything changes. You stop seeing yourself as broken. You start seeing yourself as experienced. You stop fighting the anxiety. You start listening to what it's trying to tell you. You stop comparing yourself to younger people who seem unbothered. You start recognizing that being bothered, when something is actually concerning, is a sign of intelligence, not fragility. So here's what you can do with this understanding. First, acknowledge that your response is valid. Your brain has reasons for reacting this way, 50 years of reasons. Second, limit your exposure without eliminating it. You don't need to watch every news cycle. Your brain can process the information without constant updates. Third, channel that protective energy into something actionable. Even small preparations, even simple plans, can calm your mind, because you're proving to your brain that you heard the warning and you responded. Fourth, talk to people your age about this. You'll discover you're not alone, that almost everyone over 50 feels this same intensity, and there's comfort in knowing that your response is normal, that it's shared, that it's human. And finally, give yourself permission to feel it, without judgment, without shame. Your anxiety isn't a character flaw. It's a feature, a sophisticated, hard-earned, wisdom-based feature of a mind that has lived and learned and remembers. So if you're watching this, and you've felt that tightness, that knot in your stomach, when conflict news comes on, know this: you're not broken. You're experienced. You're not too sensitive. You're appropriately calibrated. You're not weak. You're wise. And your brain is doing exactly what 5 decades of life taught it to do: protect you, warn you, keep you ready, even when the world feels unstable, especially when the world feels unstable. Now I want to hear from you. Does this happen to you when you watch the news? Or have you noticed this pattern in someone you know? Drop a comment below and let me know. Hit that like button if this explained something you've been feeling. And subscribe, because there's another behavioral pattern that appears after this anxiety response, and almost nobody recognizes it. It's about what your mind does when it can't find a clear solution to the threat it's sensing, and it's more common than you think.